Release the code to show exactly what it is. Don't waste a crisis to build trust. That's what I would say.
There's an additional lack of control. You can opt out of Facebook.
Data surveillance feels like that nosy auntie who's constantly prying for information from you, and you don't really have a choice but to respond because there's family around you. But it does make a person uncomfortable.
And now that you're telling people that it can be used for criminal offences, who's there to not say that there's a possibility that the government will come up with something different?
There was a need to find a way to make this happen easily. That's the key word, easily. Up to the point when the code was released, that was version 1. So you find that version 1 of the TraceTogether app is on GitHub.
I think my sense of the discussion in Singapore is that it has now opened the eyes for a lot of people. What I would love to see is, greater engagement, transparency across the board so that more people are clued in. The more you understand, the better you feel and the better you're able to accept.
I am not entirely familiar with the technicalities of TraceTogether and how it works, but when they decided to launch TraceTogether, it was a full process. It wasn't like a sudden thing. I think they announced it last year, and when that was being announced, there were people who actually voiced out their grievances. They were concerned, like, oh, is it going to be tracking my location and all that stuff? So I felt like that was a really good opportunity for misconceptions, myths to be debunked. I think most people are alarmed, or many people are alarmed, because first of all, maybe there's no trust in the people in power, perhaps due to like a lack of transparency, and also because of the pandemic, it kind of accelerated a lot of things, and everything is happening all at once, and it becomes very overwhelming. I thought TraceTogether was a pretty sound solution for combating the pandemic, honestly. After a while, it became an issue of trust, whether you can trust the government when you're using this and all that stuff, because of how there were like sudden changes with regards to like the policies.
I think TraceTogether itself is pretty solid in terms of the technology behind it. It's good that they did some open sourcing at the start and that let security professionals take a look at the code, see how sound it is. In fact, in the early rollout, there were some cases where there was additional telemetry within the applications, and some cybersecurity professionals pointed it out, and those were patched out later.
There have been talks about the perceived moving of goalposts when it comes to what TraceTogether and Safe Entry can be used for. I believe TraceTogether has been effective for contact tracing, and it would be good if the public could trust TraceTogether and Safe Entry more going forward to make up that 70% that is needed.
The way they rolled out was very rushed, and it was rushed out just to handle the situation at that time. I think at that time when the government introduced out TraceTogether, they weren't prepared of what are the possible uses that TraceTogether could have been used.
I feel like there's different discussions going on about TraceTogether, but the one greatest discussion that everybody has is regarding the privacy issues of TraceTogether and whether it is valid or not. People are alarmed because they have no knowledge of the situation. They don't know what's going on, or possibly what is being saved in our TraceTogether information, and I think that is a cause for alarm.
It was just used for contact tracing. So when the police was suddenly involved in this murder case, it would have occurred to them that maybe we could have tapped onto the usage of TraceTogether. So I wouldn't blame the government now for actually not declaring it in the first place, because it never occurred to them.
In terms of contact tracing, TraceTogether and the technology behind it, Blue Trace, and how even other countries implement it, like even Apple and Google, it has benefited our contact tracers. So I would say yes, the technology is sound and it does help us within this pandemic.
TraceTogether has really helped speed up the process of contact tracing, especially because previously everybody had to go through memory, and like, because we are humans, we are bound to forget a lot of things, and it's these little minor details that sometimes get ignored or erased from memory. Probably if let's say you're going from one place to another, let's say from Plaza Sing to Orchard, you might have forgotten you made a small detour to Cuppage. These kind of little details that not a lot of people remember.
The question you have to ask is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? You're trying to solve contact tracing. The TraceTogether objective is very clearly contact tracing with anonymity, in the sense that I, as a person holding a device or a token that has got TraceTogether running, won't know who else is around me, but the device will know at which point, at future date, if it becomes C positive, then you have to, you have the opportunity to release the data and then figure out what to do. And that's part of the confusion, because what GovTech and MOH could have done on day one is to put out the information saying this is what's happening, and perhaps on a daily basis, or maybe not daily, maybe weekly basis, to say, okay, these are the number of people who were successfully contact traced because of this. You have to show these things, and this is where transparency is very important. The more people are informed, the less disinformation gets propagated because disinformation loves a vacuum. Flood it with good information. Tell us what's going on, and that's where the positive thing comes in. And then on top of that, you change I'm not saying changing the rule, clarifying that this was the fact that the data could be used for criminal investigations. It doesn't matter what you say. That's what the law says. It has always been there. So you cannot go on a fishing expedition and say, what else can I find? So it has to be very specific. So the same thing applies here. If this was meant for contact tracing, that's all it should be for, nothing beyond that.
Practically speaking, I think, yes, seems like a pretty viable solution for the sole purpose of contact tracing. Whether people are clear, whether they trust the device enough to be able to use it. I cannot say for sure that, I know that this is 100% effective, but I won't say it's a problematic device. Yeah.
Firstly, the people who complain, I will have to ask them whether they have a Facebook account. If they have, they have no right to complain. So, but having said that, I mean, it's funny when I hear all these complaints, and these are also sometimes the same individuals who are playing Pokemon Go everywhere. And what is that telling you? You're telling the whole world where you are. So what are you what are you upset about just because you have the word Singapore government in front of the application?
Okay, so I think that the issue of privacy issues ensued, especially after the whole declaration that they were going to use it for other stuff besides contact tracing. I felt that this only brought about kind of deep-seated or deeply entrenched sentiments people might have had about privacy. It's not about the device itself. I think it's about how the people feel towards the idea of this. When you give your data away for marketing purposes versus giving away your data to the government, data surveillance feels like that nosy auntie who's constantly prying for information from you, and you don't really have a choice but to respond because there's family around you. You don't want to come off as rude, but it does make a person uncomfortable, and the discomfort comes from you not knowing what she's going to do with that information, first of all. And secondly, it's because you feel like it was being forced out of you. You feel like all this information is being forced out of you, and it gives you that lack of control. Okay. Shit. Sorry. I'm scared. I'm scared. Please, government, do not see this. I would love to give the benefit of the doubt. Okay, to be like, oh wow, okay, data collection is for good things, On the other hand, there's so many negative implications that come with it. So whether I fear it or not, yes, the fear is still there. The fear and anxiety of what my data can be used for is still there, definitely.
The problem with that, and now coming out to say that the CPC applied all along, or even the Infectious Diseases Act applied all along, people look at it as, they have moved the goalpost what if they do that again in the future? And not just for TraceTogether or Safe Entry, but for other things. When it comes to things like Facebook, Twitter, other stuff online, you sort of give something, whether consciously or not, and you get something back in return. The problem there is there's an additional lack of control. You can opt out of Facebook, right? But when it comes to a government initiative that decides whether you can enter a building or not, then people would start to feel that privacy is being infringed to a certain extent. So I think that's where a lot of this comes from. So a lot of this on a mandatory portion, right? What you put up on Facebook and other social media platforms is what you have curated to a certain extent, and also some data that you have offered up consciously or unconsciously, like your email, your date of birth. But when it comes to what our TraceTogether and Safe Entry does, this control is taken out of your hands.
There were people I know, I didn't want to do that, but people I know, let's reverse engineer what is this binary trying to do that is sitting in the phone, to see what are the kind of conversation, what is the, what data is being sent out and so on. Why? Because you didn't tell me what is being done, so I don't trust you. So I'm going to reverse engineer, I'm going to publish the reverse engineered code. And so one of the individuals did that, which is great. But that defeats the point. So release the code to show exactly what it is and gain the trust and move forward with it. I think that's really, don't waste a crisis to build trust. That's what I would say.
Okay, honestly, I think what the people with privacy concerns have, what they want from the government is accountability. I think that's one of the things that could probably regain a bit of the trust, because it seemed like they were not accountable in their little, mistake, I guess, their oversight. And if you think about it, this whole privacy issue ensued because there is intrinsic value in privacy. If they decided to be super transparent, they're like, okay, you know what, we've heard your grievances. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna lay all our cards on the table, and this is what's going on. Then of course I definitely have a bit more trust in the government. And it's like when they decided to live stream the parliamentary sittings, and this was a super recent move even. I think that in itself probably gained a bit of trust from the people, because now everything is more transparent. Now we know what's going on, which is great. Yeah, and that's what we should be working towards. I think the more information they give about this device, or what the data on the device can be used for, I guess the better it is. But I still don't agree with the fact that it's used for something other than contact tracing.
If you set the gold standard has been TraceTogether data only for TraceTogether stuff. That's it. That's the gold standard. With this caveat, or the mea culpa that the minister admitted to, you are now in a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being the gold standard. Very good. We have gone down a couple of notches, maybe 7. With this change, with this legislative change, you may be going up to, in my mind, go up to 7.5, maybe not even 8. Okay. Why do I say that? Because that was the gold standard. The rest of the world was looking at, hey, Singapore is doing it like that. And this is Singapore, known for other stuff. But they recognize that this has to be done that way, and in Parliament it was said this is what it's going to be used for, period. And now the mea culpa happens. Oh, let's change it a little bit, just clarify it and do stuff like that, which is fine. But now you have dropped in a notch.
My worry is that if the people can see that TraceTogether will be used for criminal investigation, who is there to say that this will not be the Pandora's box to expand on how the government will be tracking us? It might spark up a debate, because the fact that originally TraceTogether data was used for contact tracing, and now that you're telling people that it can be used for criminal offences, who's dare to not say that there's a possibility that the government will come up with something different. They may rework.
At which point I think we
TraceTogether.
just have to vote out the government at that point.
So
The trust is gone.
I think that is the worry that most people might have.
I very much had hoped that the government would come up with a legislation that blocked off any access except for contact tracing. It is not worth it to have this option of accessing the data when it infringes on public trust. The citizens do not trust the government's messaging when there is some perceived movement of the goalpost. Then how can we trust them regarding further matters, including the vaccine and things down the line? So there is still that disconnect that, hey, you have promised this, in actuality it's this, and now we are only bringing us one step closer but not the actual promise. So there's still that disconnect.
To say that we're doing this for the sake of national security is something that you have to compromise for the sake of national security. I think it comes from a very presumptuous point of view. It makes it seem like one needs to take precedence over the other, but I feel like these things don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive.
So we need to collectively as a society come together and craft something. Don't leave it to the government to do it. Let's, as a citizenry, let's come together, create a digital Bill of Rights, whatever it might be. And then we say, this is what we want. And then we work with the government and say, hey, make this happen. This is what we want. It's not about taking credit for this or that. That's not the point. The point is, this is to do the right thing. So if we had a digital Bill of Rights, for example, a lot of this conversation that we're having now probably doesn't need to happen because it's already enshrined in that digital Bill of Rights. So this gives us an opportunity, probably an impetus to say, hey, we need to do this. Let's craft something up. Sadly, we don't have a Bill of Rights, as it were, in a separate document. We should have one. Okay, we don't have one, so let's start one and add the digital components in there as well. So that's my final thought for this. Thank you.